Welcome to Golden Blue, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget about the checklist. Hat check, sunglasses check, Pepsi check, notes check, sources check, and thick skin is a check. And don't forget to sing gear to represent your team and yourself in my background. Send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina, 29657, and get yourself a shout out. On to the next video. In case you're wondering, these are the teams that we don't have represented for the mini helmets. As you can see, we actually have quite a few big brands that's not represented here at Golden Blue. So get your team represented here on Golden Blue. Hey, you already know what time it is, so might as well sit down, brace yourself, and buckle up because you are entering the speculation zone. First off, guys, I'm not feeling great today, so if I don't have the same energy that I usually have or my voice sounds weird, now you know why. And I really thought about doing an April Fool's type of video, but you know what? I do so much speculation and rumors and what I'm hearing and all that stuff that it all kind of falls under the same category. A lot of people think my videos are April Fool's anyway, so we're just going to stick with what we do and what got us here and not really worry about the April Fool's, so you can take it the way you want. By the way, this will be a Get It Game video idea. If you don't know what the Get It Game is, it's basically a name that I came up with for a group of people that leave video ideas in the comment section of my videos. So if you think that you have a good video idea, leave it in the comment section of this video or any other video, and I just might use it on my next video. And as each day passes, it does seem like that ESPN is pulling out of the deal with the Pac-12. Is ESPN actually trying to kill the Pac-12? Well, when you really think about things, it makes sense to actually think that. Because if teams started jumping to the Big 12 and maybe, this is more far-fetched, maybe to the ACC, ESPN would get those teams at a discount. So first up, some Get It Gang video ideas. This is from Darren Bard. I heard a rumor where Big Ten wants Stanford and Cal over Washington and Oregon. Apparently, Stanford and Cal would bring in a lot of money due to academics, money plus the sports money. These schools would bring into conference versus what Washington and Oregon would bring in. This could be the reason that ESPN wants Washington and Oregon to go to the Big 12 because they know that they're not the top choices of the Big 10. He's basically talking about ESPN trying to get Oregon and Washington into the Big 12. Maybe they know that the Big 10 is actually going to go after Cal and Stanford and that Oregon and Washington, they're really not going to have any options. And even though Washington and Oregon definitely do not want to go to the Big 12 or maybe use it as a stepping stone, ESPN is going to try to get them into the Big 12, even if it means trying to bribe them into the Big 12. That's a big stretch right there. But in these days, never say never. Because remember what I stated from the Swaim show yesterday. Breaking news, ESPN only paying $9 million per Pac-12 team, but now they're going to offer multiple Pac-12 schools the same money they'll pay each to make a Big 12 move. If more than 4, I'm not a fan. A lot of people are associating that with the Four Corner schools. I associated that with the Four Corner schools. But if you really think about it, they also could be talking about Washington and Oregon, basically trying to bribe Washington and Oregon to go to the Big 12. Because it is a real possibility that the Big Ten could go out and get Stanford and Cal. I mean, they meet all the academic requirements, and they would have a lot of resources that the Big Ten could use. Because remember, the Big Ten is a Commonwealth conference, so everybody has access to everybody's resource. So they bring in a lot of value when it comes to resources, and they would be great travel partners for USC and UCLA. Yes, Washington and Oregon would help USC and UCLA when it comes to travels, but Stanford and Cal would help them out tremendously. Ken Stewart says this, the Big Ten Football Conference isn't going to add schools based on academics. Simply put, ESPN and Fox couldn't care less about the grades the players get. Funny joke though. See, that's where you're not getting it, Ken. This isn't about the grades that the students make. This is about the money that these schools bring in research revenue and the resources that the Big Ten would have access if they join the Big Ten. Cal and Stanford most certainly has value when it comes to the Big Ten. Definitely more than Oregon. Now, Washington is more of an argument because Washington does have a lot of research revenue. So Washington actually fits the argument. It's Oregon that could be left out of the dust. David Skiff says this, research and market exposure can overcome football ability. Just look at Rutgers and Maryland. I think Stanford and Cal are also more likely on the Big Ten radar than Washington and Oregon. That is why if they get any deal, Oregon and Washington could only be accepted at a reduced rate. It would be for a much longer time period than people are thinking it would be. So that goes back to what Ken Stewart said as far as ESPN and Fox doesn't care about the players' grades. That may be correct, but the Big Ten does care about those academics and that research revenue. And you said that the Big Ten Conference wouldn't add schools based on academic numbers, but yet they added Maryland and Rutgers because of, well, academic numbers. And don't forget that these schools, even if you're not talking about academics, yes, they don't have good football brands, but they're in a big TV market. Cal and Stanford would cover the entire Bay Area when it comes to the state of California. So yes, they would actually be valuable whenever it comes to viewership in sports and the Pac-12. So I strongly disagree with that comment, but I understand why you think that. But make no mistake about it, Cal and Stanford do have a ton of value when it comes to the Big Ten. John Sharp said this: maybe ESPN and Fox are trying to break up the Pac-12 to keep streaming from gaining any kind of foothold on the college football landscape and having a chance to succeed. That is a very good point right there. And a lot of people have actually said that ESPN and Fox do not want streaming to get involved with college football because eventually it could actually take over. And I think that's exactly what could happen. I think the Pac-12 is a little ahead of its time as far as trying to get a streaming deal right now. But I do think the future of viewing college football and any other sport for that matter is going to be streaming. So yes, it could be possible that Fox and ESPN are trying to get rid of the Pac-12. That way streaming can't enter the picture, at least for the near future, other than ESPN Plus. Don't forget about that. Joey Zay says this: ESPN prefers that the Pac-10 die, just like the Big East did last expansion round in 2012. Yes, ESPN definitely had a hand on the Big East dying in 2012. And they could have a major hand in the Pac-12 dying in 2023 or 2024. So I definitely do agree with that comment. So whether Washington and Oregon goes to the Big 12 because of bribery from ESPN, or Washington and Oregon go to the Big Ten because the Big Ten actually wants them, then the Big 12 can get the four corners, and perhaps Oregon State and Washington State. Any of those scenarios is bad news for the Pac-12. Because right now, as we speak, the Pac-12 is looking at a streaming-heavy deal. When ESPN was involved in this TV deal, they were offering $90 million a year, which broken down by 10 teams, that's not even counting expansion, that would be $9 million per team per year. So if they would have expanded to San Diego State and SMU, that's going to cut the pie even more. So I can agree with this. I do think that ESPN could be trying to dismantle the Pac-12, number one, to get these Pac-12 teams at a cheaper rate, and number two, to try to keep streaming out of the picture. They don't want streaming to get a foothold in college football and take over, because then their business will suffer greatly. But I think it's the future. I don't think ESPN and Fox will be able to avoid that. Maybe they need to come up with a plan for the future to where they can actually focus on streaming as well. Worst case scenario for the Pac-12 would be this: the Big Ten actually gets Stanford and Cal, not Washington and Oregon, because of their academics and because of their TV viewership as far as the market goes, the Bay Area. That would be a big get for the Big Ten, both in research revenue / academics and TV viewership market. The second thing, ESPN is able to bribe Washington and Oregon to go to the Big 12, even if it's just for a short time, and the Big 10 wants them in the future. And then the third thing, the four corner schools do indeed jump to the Big 12. Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado end up jumping to the Big 12. And who knows, maybe the Big 12 actually gets Oregon State and Washington State. That means the Pac-12 would cease to exist. However, the Pac-12 could be thinking forward and adding members now. That way the Pac-12 will continue to exist, even if they do get picked apart just at a much lower level. I do think that the days of the Pac-12 as we know it is going to be done and over with. I think those days are numbered. But I think the Pac-12 brand as a brand will continue to exist, because all they have to do is continue to backfill with Mountain West schools and perhaps some schools out of the AAC and maybe some teams elsewhere. Who knows? So as a conference, as a brand, I think the Pac-12 will survive this. But the Pac-12 as we know it right now, I think the days are numbered as far as that goes. So y'all in the comment section, number one, do you think it's true? Do you think ESPN and Fox are actually trying to get rid of the Pac-12? Whether it's because of streaming or whether it's because they're trying to get the Pac-12 teams at a cheaper rate. Number two, do you think the worst case scenario could happen for the Pac-12? Big Ten gets Stanford and Cal. ESPN is able to bribe Washington and Oregon to the Big 12, even if they do end up joining the Big Ten later on. And of course, the four corners making the jump to the Big 12. And maybe Oregon State and Washington State comes with them. Do you think there's a big time chance of that actually happening? Number three, what do you think the Pac-12 needs to do if it wants to survive as the Pac-12 as we know it right now? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.